Hi, it's Rob from the Russian Boltgun. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint an Ultramarine Primaris Intercessor. So this is the fella that we're going to be painted. He's one of the standard ones that you can get from the Intercessors pack, and he's been spray painted with the Army Painter Ultramarine Blue. And the first colour that we're going to paint onto him is Citadel Retributor Armour. We're going to paint this on the shoulder trims to show the second company, and also do the chest aquila and a few of the details like the rounds for his bolt gun, and a little aquila on his bolt gun as well. Next up, we're going to be using Vallejo Black, but as always, any black will do. I'm going to be using this to do the seals around his armour plates, and also the main body of the bolt rifle. After years and years of painting the normal Space Marines, like the tactical squads and what have you, I do really enjoy painting the Intercessors. They're just slightly different enough that you can enjoy painting them with enough interesting details to keep you going through them. That's why I'll be painting quite a few different Intercessors at the moment. We're now going to move on to Citadel Mephiston Red. I'm going to use this just to do his eye lenses. It's a very quick colour, this one. Next, it's Citadel Mournfang Brown. I'm going to use this to do all his pouches and his holster. It's nice brown, you can get a decent leather effect on this pretty easy. So now I like to use this as the standard for me Space Marine ammo pouches and pouches that they have around the waist. Just give that a nice smooth layer of Mournfang Brown. If you get any streaks in it, just give it another quick layer. Now I'll move on to the next one. Like so. Now we're going to use a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Chrome. It's a very thin colour this, but it's got tons of pigment in, so although it's thin, you can spread it over a wide area and it'll cover pretty much any colour that you put it onto. So we're going to do all the metallic parts of the bolt rifle with this. You can see from the way it goes on that it's really smooth, it's really quick to put on as well because it is thin. As I say, there's tons of pigment, so it covers everything, it looks really, really good. Now we're going to move on to the shades. The first is going to be Citadel Drakenhof Nightshade. I'm going to be doing this on all of the blue armour. That's another good thing that I enjoy about Marines, is there's not too many colours on them. If it's just a standard Marine with no extra seals or no extra details like that, you're not talking very many layers at all, so it is quite a quick one to paint, but you can still get really good effects and make them look good, even without all the different colours on them. As you can see, I'm just putting the shade onto all the little details here. We'll be going back over this with Macragge blue in a moment, just to get the colour back on there. So next is a little bit of Carrowbird Crimson, and again this is the eye lenses, so it's going to be a very, very quick layer. Just going to throw a little bit of that in each eye lens, and that's fine. Next shade is going to be Citadel Graxer shade. I'm going to be using this on all of the gold, the pouches, and also the strap for his bolt rifle, or the sling for his bolt rifle I should say, it's not a strap. Don't forget to do the ammunition and the rear end of the grenades there, the percussion caps for the grenades. Now we're going to use Citadel Null Oil. We're going to do this on all the silver metallics. Just give that a nice coating so it gets into all the recesses, brings out the details. Now later on I don't actually do anything else with the silver once I've painted this on. If you do want to bring out the edges or anything like that, you could use a little bit of Necron compound to just Citadel dry paint and do some light dry brushing with that just to bring out the edges, or you could just use another metallic just to bring out the edge and do a light dry brush with that. I just tend to leave it with the null and oil on there just because the silver shows through enough and the detail shows up with the null and oil, so it does everything I need it to. Now we return to the normal colours, so we're going to start with Citadel Macragge blue. I'm just going to start reapplying all the colour to the armour plates, leaving the Drakenhof nightshade in all the recesses. I used to have an Ultramarine Army when I first started playing. That was sort of through Rogue Trader, and then I kind of stopped in 2nd edition. Used the Rogue Trader rules and then the compendium and the compilation for all the rules we needed. I had Ultramarines all the way through there. I had a full company, painted up as veterans with the white helmets and that. It's the first Ultramarine I've painted for probably about 12-15 years. Next up, I'm going to add a little bit of Vallejo White to the Macragge blue. I'm just going to start on the first layer of highlights. Now what you're going to be doing when you're thinking of the highlights is thinking about where the light is going to catch the armour plates, the light shining down from above, and try and do those areas with the lighter highlight. Then the highlights that we're going to do after this are just going to cover part of these highlight areas. Now we're going to add a little bit more Vallejo White to the mix. I'm going to do another highlight. This highlight wants to cover about 50% of the area that you've just highlighted. Now I'll start doing around the lenses here and around this faceplate, which I shouldn't really have done. I should be doing the armour plates and putting a bit more colour onto them, a bit more highlights onto all these areas, but became confused and started highlighting that part. But you do want to be doing this highlight over about 50% of the previous highlight, making sure that you leave the Drakenhof in the recesses and also that you can see the previous highlight as well. So you can see here where I've put that highlight. You've got the first highlight, and then you've got the second highlight on this part. You can also see the different shades on his pauldron on the other side, on the helmet, on the backpack and on his legs. So you can also see on his backpack here, we've highlighted the top areas here, leaving the shade underneath, and then we've highlighted the bottom part of the triangle, leaving the shade underneath the bit that's sticking out, so it's casting the shadow down onto that triangular area. So now we're going to add a little bit of Vallejo White to the previous mix. I'm just going to highlight around the edges, the top edges, or the top surfaces of any edges, I should say, just to make those stand out. So with the armour plates, you want to be doing the top edges of any lines or details on there, so the light is catching on them. And carry on doing this over the whole model. So now you've got the blue of the armour done, we're now going to move on to the gold. So it's back to Citadel Retributor armour. And again, thinking about where the light's going to be catching it, you want to be using Retributor armour on the top edges of all the gold areas, leaving the Agrax shade on the underside to keep that dulled down and dark. And carry on doing all the chest aquila, the aquila on his rifle, the rounds in his bolt rifle, that kind of thing. So now that we've done all the gold on him, we're going to use a little bit of Citadel Liberator gold. And we're going to start highlighting that area. So again, thinking about where the light is going to be catching the armour plates and the gold on the armour plates, you want to be highlighting those. I'm doing a few little edges on the underside so the light's catching them just to show the shine in the darkened areas. Now we're going to be doing parts of the chest aquila as well. Mainly doing around the join and the feathers on each wing, and the very edges of the feathers on the outside of the aquila as well. The final highlight for the gold, we're going to add a little bit of Vallejo Model Air Chrome to the previous Liberator gold. Now we're just going to be doing edges and the odd little spot of this colour just to really bring out the shine. As I said earlier, it's got loads of pigments in it, so it does lighten the Liberator gold quite well, so it stands out as a highlight. It's also really good for edging the gold. Next up, it's Citadel Mephiston Red. We're going to start working on his eyes, so we're also going to be using Vallejo White. So there's going to be a few little stop-starts in this part. But first up, we're just going to be adding the Mephiston Red back to each eye lens. Now we've added a little bit of Vallejo White to the previous mix, and we're just going to highlight the very front. Now ordinarily I'd do the highlights at the back, but I wanted to try something a little bit different and just see how it looked with the highlight at the front of the lens. It doesn't actually look too bad, to be honest. Having a little bit of a try out of this, but there is a video on how to do eye lenses. I'll link that up here, which is the usual way I do them. Just thought I'd try something a little different now. So we're going to add a little bit more white and do another highlight. That was just one of the cats leaping on my chair while I'm recording the sound. Like so, and now we're just going to use a little bit of Vallejo White to do a final line highlight on the lens. We've got a little spot there, and then we're going to do one little line at the very back end of the lens as well, just as a highlight. Like so. Now as always, if you knacker up the lens, which I often do, just reapply the red, start again. It takes no time at all to do them. It's also good practice. We're also going to use a little tiny bit of Mephiston Red just to do the caps on the grenades here. Just make sure you get all the edges of those. Nice smooth bit of red. Now we're going to move on to the leather pouches and the sling. So we're going to be going back to Citadel Mournfang Brown. You're going to be highlighting all the raised areas on his holster and on the pouches. The areas that would be catching the light most, and the areas that would be worn most as well. So all around the corners and the edges and things like that, you want to make sure you get those parts. So when we come to highlight it, we'll be doing it as though the leather's been scuffed a little bit, so it'll be worn on the corners. You'll have that lighter shade of brown on the corners where it'll be worn away. So now I'm going to add some Citadel Rakarth flesh to the Mournfang brown. I'm going to start doing highlights on all these brown parts. I think where the light is going to catch it the most, colour those in with the flat highlight, and where it's just going to be catching maybe an edge, just use the side of the brush just to add a little bit of a highlight there. Now we're going to add a little bit more Rakarth flesh to the mix. We're going to do the very edge highlights on the sling and on the pouches, and this is the areas that I'm going to be doing, or using this rather, to look like it's been a bit chafed rather than just highlighted. So we're going to try and make those highlights a little bit ragged looking, as though the leather is a little bit worn. Now we're moving on to Vallejo Black. We're just going to reapply the black to the body of the bolt rifle and also all of the seals on his armour. And then that'll give you a nice smooth base for when we do the highlights. Some parts of the black will only be having one highlight, other parts will be having two. But if you get the nice smooth base layer of black there, puts you in a good position for your highlighting. As always, if there's any particular chapters of Space Marines you want to see painted up, just post them up below. We'll see what we can do for you. Now we're going to highlight with Vallejo German Grey. So as always, you just want to be trying to find the top edges, the areas that are going to be catching the most light, and highlighting them with it. Also using that on the seals. Now the final highlight for the black is going to be Citadel Mechanicus Standard Grey. I'm going to use this to do the very edge highlights on the bolt rifle. We're not going to be putting any of this onto the seals because I like to have the seals very, very dull, very matte. So they only get the German Grey highlight, while the bolt rifle and the edges will have the Mechanicus Standard Grey just to make those angles really stand out. Again, it's only going to be the top edges, so you're not going to be highlighting the bottom angles either. Now we're going to use some Vallejo White. I'm going to start doing the shoulder. This is going to be the Ultramarines chapter badge. There'll be a short video of this start to finish in slow time coming up, I would have thought, this coming Sunday. I'm planning to have a folder with just all the chapter badges and the iconography and stuff like that, so there'll be a playlist with all of those on. This is me starting off to do the shoulder pad, just drawing the top parts, get them so that you're happy, so that they're level and straight. And once you're happy with them, you can add the U of the Omega underneath it. So now we're going to be going for the U, a little bit of a break in that part. This is going to cut off part way through because the full video will be there on Sunday. So you're just doing the rough outline and trace out more or less where you want it. And then once you've got the rough outline, you can look at that, see where it is, how it looks, and start either adding little bits to the edges to fill it in and get it the right shape, or you can start taking it away by using a little bit of the blue just to trim it down and get it to the right shape. But overall, once this is finished, I am quite happy with the overall result of it. So now we're going to use a little bit of Macragge blue just to trim that down. So you can see the left hand side there is a bit thick at the top, and it's not very rounded here, so you're using a tiny bit of Macragge blue and you're just cutting that in and cutting out the little bit of overhang that you've got there. Just neatening up those edges, making that look better. And then the same at the top there, it's not very angular at the very, very top, so we're going to sharpen that up, take that in just a tiny little bit. Then we will tidy that up. Now we're going to be doing the battle line markings for him. So this is going to be the white arrow on the shoulder pad. Again, there's already a video for this in the Space Marine Iconography playlist. So if you want to see that, it gives you a start to finish on how I do the full battle line marking on this shoulder pad, so the full arrow and the numbers inside it. Next up, we're going to be using a little bit of Vallejo Black. I'm just going to be making him a member of the 11th squad, so we want a nice big X going on there. And then the 1 next to it. And from there you're going to be adding the little lines across the top of each bit. If you join up the lines like that, or you make one of the lines a little bit shoddy, it's not a problem. You can just go back, use a little bit of white and tidy that up afterwards. Like so. I'm adding a little bit of a line of white down the side there. That's just to widen that arrowhead. I'm going to use a tiny little bit of Citadel Avalanche Sunset. And this is just to colour in the wire on this little piece here. I'm not going into any great detail on that. It's just a little bit of a mechanism on them, but you can use a little bit of black and put stripes on there. And then we have the finished Ultramarine. Quite happy with how he turned out. It's the first one I've painted for years, but I like the way it looks like the light's catching him, so I'm pretty pleased with that.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you have, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future content. Also, think about subscribing to some of our other social media linked below. Thanks very much.